Inside of today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the worst star powers and gadgets in the game right now. So things don't really change too much from season to season in terms of star powers and gadgets, mainly because they're not really balanced at all, right? So a lot of them are still going to be pretty much the same, but still some change a lot because of the meta and the way the balance changes kind of work out. So before we jump into it, make sure you're using the creator code. That'd be greatly appreciated. Without further ado, let's jump into it. So firstly, we're going to be taking a look at the worst gadgets in the game, starting off with Penny's gadget, Trusty Spyglass. So this gadget, whenever you press it, once you have Penny's turret, it will shoot out at the enemies within range. So this could shoot out multiple projectiles pretty fast. It sounds pretty strong, right? But really, I've never seen any value with it. I've never seen it picked in Power League whatsoever. So I know a lot of you will say that Salty Barrel is just too strong. I think even without Salty Barrel in the game, I don't think it'd be used whatsoever. It's only really usable, I would say, in Hot Zone, just to keep the enemies away from the zone. Maybe usable in game modes, well, maps like Ring of Fire, but still, Trusty Spyglass is just terrible. A lot of times it's really inaccurate, and I just don't think it really suits Penny too much. So next up on the worst gadgets, we have Bee's gadget, Rattled Hive. So it took me a long time to even get any value out of it in the gameplay, but for me, it's just terrible. A lot of times people can easily avoid it unless you're literally blind. You can literally walk through these shots. Of course, it used to be one of the best gadgets in the game, but it's had its time easily. And I would say maybe if you even do connect it onto someone, you're probably only going to hit a couple of bees, and that's like 1,200 damage. That is literally nothing, especially to some of the tanky brawlers in the game. A lot of people use the shield gear as well, so that's really going to do nothing. I just feel like at the start of games as well, I just like to spam it out, and then that's it. You have no gadgets for the rest of the game. So for me, Rattled Hive is like nowhere near what it used to be. You used to be able to press it, get a lot of pressure, and literally just the pressure alone used to win your games, but it doesn't even get pressure anymore. Literally any brawler can just tank this gadget easily. So for me, it has to be one of the worst gadgets in the game. So next up in one of the worst gadgets in the game, we have Bonnie's gadget called Crash Test. So this gadget can only be activated in Bonnie form, in that smaller form. And for me, it's just absolutely terrible. It's actually laughable. So there's a few scenarios maybe where you might use it if a brawler's about to use a super and interrupt them, but still, it's pretty hard to actually get any value out of it. It only deals 300 damage upon the knockback as well. And I feel like most of the time anyways, when you're playing a Bonnie, you want to be jumping onto brawlers that are pretty squishy. So by that time anyways, you've got the kill, right? You land on them with the damage and you burst them down pretty quickly. You don't even need that additional kind of knockback. Maybe if they buffed it so the damage was a little bit more, it might be usable, especially against hard counters. But for me, there's just no use for it. You get a lot of value out of the other gadget as well. So next up, we have the worst gadget in the game, which is RT's gadget called Inline. So Inline is a gadget which I've probably played nearly like 24 hours worth of gameplay with RT. And I've probably hit an opponent maybe twice, which is just ridiculous. So RT with this gadget, it just doesn't do anything. You may as well not even buy the gadget for him. I think once he gets this other gadget, it might actually be one of the best brawlers in the game. But right now, it's like playing without gadget, which of course is really stupid because you want to have a gadget that gives you some value in the game, right? So all it does, if you're wondering what it actually does, it shoots out a projectile. So when you split off from in between the legs and to your normal form, so it will shoot off a projectile, it will slow them and deal a little bit of damage. But the main thing is that you're never in that situation. It's just a really small projectile as well. For me, it's going to be by far the worst gadget I've probably ever seen in the game. So moving into another really bad gadget, which everyone surely knows about by now, it is Amber's gadget called Dancing Flames. So this gadget, when reading it, sounds pretty strong, right? But whenever you press it, it's just quite funny. For the first time, I remember pressing this gadget and I just laughed out loud because it looks so terrible and so pathetic. Only 500 damage every single time someone hits it. They're probably going to hit it once. Like 500 damage isn't nothing. I know it's probably introduced into the game to try and get rid of Amber's kind of counters because, of course, when someone is close to Amber, she's going to get countered. She can't deal enough damage, but still, it's just terrible. The radius is terrible. Everything about it is so bad. So moving into the worst star powers, and starting off with a Dino Jump. So probably the most popular star power in the community, but for me, especially since they've nerfed the Dino Jump basically because of how Dynamite's bombs work, you just can't double jump anymore unless you use super or you're against a wall. So of course those flashy plays are just going to be terrible right now. So the only real reason to use Dino Jump is mainly maybe if you're against Mortis or another aggro, it might help you out a little bit, but I'd still rather just use the other style power because the main reason why I use Dynamite is to counter those more squishier brawlers, especially with his super and his main attacks. So for me, Dino Jump is just pretty useless in this meta. So next up with another really bad star power. So it's Bonnie again. Bonnie has a really terrible gadget and a really terrible star power. So Wisdom Tooth, ever since its introduction, is just horrific. So I thought when it was first released, I thought it'd be somewhat useful, especially if the radius was a little bit bigger, but I just found out as time went on, it's nearly impossible to hit someone with it. Even if you do, by a miracle, hit someone with that additional damage, it's only an extra 375 damage, which in turn really isn't too much, especially because of just how terrible it is. The radius is just never going to hit anyone, and I would rather just use the other star power to get more value, especially when you're trying to target a specific brawler. So for me, this could definitely have some value if it's buffed in its radius, but for now it's just so terrible because you're just never going to hit anyone with it. So moving on to another really terrible star power, we have Mr. P's star power, Handle with Care. So Handle with Care on the front of it seems okay because of course Mr. P lacks in a lot of damage right now, but it's just really awkward to use, especially because you only get the additional damage every 4 seconds, but not only that, only when the suitcase actually lands. So it's actually pretty hard to really do that a lot of times, unless someone's behind a wall maybe, or if they're dumb enough to walk back into the suitcase, and it's only, as I said, every 4 seconds. So it's actually rare you'll really get any value out of it, and especially if you're in a long range fight, which Mr. P, you know, you're trying to get in this gunfight right at long range to try and get the most value out of a star of power, but you're just not going to hit it because the skillful players should easily be able to avoid Mr. P at long range. So for me, it's just not really working out the way it's intended. So moving on to another terrible star power, we have Mandy's star power called Hard Candy. So the star power seems like it makes sense on the front of it, like giving her a shield, she's a little bit squishy and a little bit vulnerable when in that focused mode. But you got to remember two things. Her main attack is really slow, especially in that focus mode. So, of course, without the other star power, it's going to be terrible, that focus zone. But not only that, I just feel like the way you play Mandy anyway is that you look to avoid taking damage when in that focus mode. You constantly go in and out of it. So I just feel like you don't really want to just stand there and just take shots right with Mandy. So it's just a little bit awkward. The shots are so slow in focus mode. I just don't really see the value in this star power. And lastly, we have Chester's star power called Sneak Peek. So I know what you're thinking straight away. Well, it's because Chester's first star power is just so strong, so you always need Bellomania. I think even if they reworked Chester to have that star power baseline, I don't think Sneak Peek would really have any value. I just feel like the way I play Chester anyways, I don't need to know what super I'm getting next. You know, the supers aren't that strong to kind of dictate the way you play, and especially if you're like close to that super, maybe it might help you out a tiny bit, but I just feel like the way I play Chester anyways, I don't need to know what super I have. I don't know if that's just me feeling or whether you guys agree as well. Like I just don't think I need to know what star power, what super I get. And also the supers aren't even that strong, so I guess it's not really going to help me out in those fights. A lot of times when I get super, I'm just going to be trying to spam it out as quickly as possible anyways. So for me, Sneak Peek just really isn't that valuable. Alright guys, it's going to be it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed this one. So let me know what star powers and gadgets desperately need some type of buff. I would have put this video out Sunday, but I just spent so much time on my video yesterday, I didn't even have time to make a video Sunday. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this one. Hopefully in future updates, I'm just praying that some of these gadgets and star powers are just buffed in even a small way, just so we can get a little bit more viability out of them. I don't know why they're not doing it, but hopefully it is pretty soon. So that's going to be it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.